Swastola Asura. I'm Seraphis, the procrastinating space pirate, and I'm here today to talk to you about the next Cypher System genre book, the Whitebook of Superheroes Claim the Sky. As much as I would like to use a superhero avatar here, well, nothing beats me. Haha. We start with a short introduction from Monte talking about his background and love for superheroes, his time at TSR, and some in-house playtesting of TSR's Marvel superheroes, and other bits about the love of superheroes. Given MCG has several superhero-led book settings with Cypher, as well as there being numerous community-made supplements also, I get the feeling that Cypher lends itself well to being the superhero story. Part 1, Gaming with Superheroes, takes us through the first half of the book, so let's dive in. Chapter 1, Building a Superhero, is less the usual introduction that we get with the last lot of white books, and instead talks us through a chart of Marvel and DC superheroes, and breaks them down by way of the Cypher system. This section also has many pages dedicated to archetypes, which was explained on the table before to help you break down your favourite superhero to adapt them into Cypher, or to help you identify the type of original superhero you want to make in a Cypher game. Chapter 2, Character Options, gives us a bunch of new descriptors, foci, and new abilities. This one is really cool, and there are some really nice abilities in here, like Short Teleport and Teleportation Burst, which offer low-level teleportation options, but with limited or shorter effects. There's a lot like that here, and I think it really shows an effort was made to abide for people who might like superheroes that were not as well known as others. Chapter 3, Superpowered Rules, gives us our new superhero mechanics, power shifts, power stunts, really impossible tasks, and modifying high-tech devices, so I'm going to attempt to make this brief. Power shifts gives you a new pool of points, and they are tied to a category and act like a permanent free level of effort in the specified category. Power stunts are where a player gains an ability they normally wouldn't have access to, or use an ability they do have in a new and unique way. For example, let's say I had a superhero called the Lighthawk, and they could project a defensive field around them that instantly transmuted hostile effects into harmless light. If one day the Lighthawk attempted to use that ability to instead channel light into it and release it towards a target as destructive energy, that would be a power stunt. Really Impossible Tasks gives us a table of difficulties 11 to 15, where 11 is a supersized robot or kaiju, and 15 they compare to a moon-sized space monster, or a god who is leader of a pantheon, like Odin or Zeus, or the progenitor dragons, or Lorien, or the father, or Sejuk, he whose hand shapes what is. Finally, modifying high-tech devices is for all those that want to tinker with tech, be it their own stuff or odd devices. Superheroes such as Tony Stark, Henry Pym, or Hank McCoy. This is basically a set of suggested alterations to the crafting rule in Cypher to adjust for those playing super intelligent tinkerers. Chapter 4, A World with Powers, takes us through a lot of the campaign setting building for the GM, things to consider, suggestions, and adding in lore and history, but just enough to be interesting, but not overwhelm a player's ability to bring their character into the setting. Chapter 5, Comic Book Storytelling, is another dive for GMs running a superhero game, as it goes over common aspects to superheroes. What's their origin story? Who's their team-ups with? Do they have a secret identity? Who's their nemesis? Will there be a guest star or crossover event? How to pace the story, such as making each session feel like an issue of a comic book. The reversal, the character turn. Developments, a section here, is when a prior event happened and then never really was undone. A long example of this being Wally West as the Flash. 2 decades went by before Barry Allen was the Flash again. Themes and special GM intrusions are the last sections I'll discuss here, and they bring up a lot of mechanical situations for the GM to use in a session. Themes is interesting, talking a lot about the implementation of very comic-y twists and narrative beats, while special GM intrusions brings a bunch of new ways to hit the players. The last section here is a 2-page spread about character death and rebirth, as superheroes who return from the dead always end up changed after the experience, until a point where they eventually are rewritten to their normal self. Chapter 6, Superhero Stories, is designed around providing the GM with seeds to develop long-form storytelling and narrative. in the same way as an 8-issue comic book arc might do. To think of this in another way, think of each of the Infinity Stone movies of the MCU. In order, eventually paying off with the Infinity War, each of the movies that were connected with others, each one sometimes developing their own payoff story arcs, but all work towards Infinity War and Endgame. If you're the kind of person as a GM to already think about that kind of stuff, then this refresher course will just reinforce that. Chapter 7, Superhero Bases, is basically a rundown of how a superhero lives, from the poor hero living out the back of a laundromat to living on a secret satellite or moon base of super high-tech origins. And that's basically it. It's a short chapter about bases. Chapter 8, Heroes, Villains and Other NPCs, gives us pages of NPCs that can be used as inspirations or as NPCs in a superhero game, or even a non-superhero game. The one I like a lot here. Page 138. Come on, don't make me quote Sathras. Chapter 9, Ciphers and Artifacts, gives us, well, 2 whole pages of new ciphers and artifacts, combined! In all honesty, I think this is because the book has done a lot of heavy lifting already, describing how to reflavor a lot of other cipher system ciphers and artifacts that they can get by with just the bare minimum. Anyway, that takes us to the end of part 1. Let's jump into part 2, Boundless, the example setting presented in the book. And I have this kind of sneaking suspicion that I can't prove that this is MCG's superhero home game setting. It's just the heroes, the villains, and whatnot. Okay, well, you generally know my stance on example settings, but a quick run through is Chapter 10, Boundless Overview, Chapter 11, History of the World, Chapter 12, Superpowered Survey, Chapter 13, Death, Thy Name is Gravitas, Chapter 14, Talons of Doom, and Chapter 15, Beneath a Red Sun. Superhero character sheet and index round out the book. I will say I do like the art overlay of the Claim the Sky character sheet, but that brings us to the end. What would I consider Claim the Sky to be? It depends on whether you're running a superhero game, or an epic level game, because I do think the power shifts are a great element for epic level play in Cypher games that don't include them normally. It is interesting that Monty in the introduction cites the creation of TSR's Marvel Superheroes game as being partly responsible for MCG's several superhero modules, Unmask, The Origin, Claim the Sky, because that used a system commonly called Phase Rip. Oh, and speaking of Phase Rip, see how seamlessly I did that? There's a crowdfunding project on BackKit right now called Heroic by Zenith Entertainment Group that, if you like the old school TSR Marvel RPG, that would be right up your alley. This isn't a paid promotion, although I do know the creator, and despite how much he hates me, I'm shouting out his project in my Cypher video. You're gonna copyright strike or report me if you make it this far, aren't you? Oh well. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. I really enjoyed talking about this one, mainly for the power shifts and power stunts mechanics in here. It was a lot like stuff from Gods of the Fall, but without the domains. There's another one I should add to the review this and the setting stuff. Anyway, I may end up with another video out before next week, as I kind of want to just chat about the Fallout TV show, but in a 100% completely spoiler conversation. Because some things in that show, wow. Oh, and ironically, the next review will be Rust and Redemption, the Cypher genre whitebook on post-apocalyptic games. Till then, enjoy. Nexus and transmission.